was a young man who left his native city of Dublin in the Republic of Ireland and traveled to the northern seaside county of Donegal. When he arrived in a quiet village there, he looked for a room that he could rent by the week. And after he settled in, he went to the village pub. And he sat at the bar and ordered 3 pints of Guinness. And seeing that he was alone, the barman was puzzled. 3 pints, all at once? Yes, that's right, if you would please. And the barman shrugged and drew 3 pints of creamy black stout and set them in front of the stranger. He then lifted one glass, clinked it to the other 2, and proceeded to drink all 3 one at a time. And the barman watched curiously and whispered to some of the regulars who were sitting at the other end of the bar. And when the stranger ordered another round, the barman suggested, you know, it's not very busy tonight. In fact, it's never all that busy here. If you like, I could draw them one at a time and they'll keep a nice head, and I think you'll enjoy them a wee bit more. And the stranger looked up and smiled sadly and said, thanks just the same, friend. But there's a reason I order my drinks 3 at a time. You see, I am a Dubliner. I was born there. My ancestors are buried there. I just moved to your fair village this very day. Just last night, I was in my neighborhood pub with my 2 brothers, having our evening pint as we always did. My brothers and I were thick as thieves since we were kids. I never spent a night under another roof from them my entire life. But work is scarce, and we were forced to try our luck elsewhere. My oldest brother has sailed for Australia, hoping to find work on a sheep farm. My younger brother, the baby of the family, has gone to America. He wants to build skyscrapers. And I came here because the thought of living in Dublin without my 2 brothers was more than I could bear. Last night, as we sat drinking our pints together, we promised one another that we would always order our drinks in rounds of 3 as we always have. That way, we could still enjoy a round together at the end of the day, wherever our fortunes took us. For the bonds of brotherhood are stronger than even the greatest distance can break. So listening to this, the barman's eyes began to fill up because he had brothers of his own. And in a voice a bit softer than his usual boisterous tone, the barman said, friend, your story has touched me deeply. Let me be the first to welcome you to our wee village. I promise that I will always bring you and your brothers drinks in rounds of 3. In fact, the next round's on me. So the stranger, whose name was Sean O'Connor, made a home in that little village and adjusted nicely to life in the country. All the villagers came to know the way he honored his brothers in the pub each night and grew to have great affection for Sean. So one cold Wednesday night, the barman called out to Sean as he entered the pub, soaked with rain. Sean O'Connor, come in and get out of that wet coat. I'll bring you your usual 3 pints of stout. No, thank you, Michael. I'll only be having 2 pints if you don't mind. Well, when the regular regulars at the pub heard him say that, the whole place fell silent. They glanced at each other and stared at the floor and imagined the worst. Solemnly, the barman brought 2 pints of Guinness over to Sean and said quietly, "Sean, I want to say how sorry I am for your loss." Sean looked up at his friend and asked, "Michael, whatever are you on about?" "Well, I just assumed that if you were only having 2 pints, something terrible must have happened to one of your brothers." Sean was shocked. And he replied, "No, heaven forbid. No, it's nothing like that. It's just I've given up the drink for Lent." Like a lot of jokes, the humor comes from the truth embodied in it. In many cases, we laugh because we need to release the tension of an uncomfortable truth. Here we see a man facing the opportunity of a Lenten discipline and turning it into an empty ritual. Somewhere, I think Sean recognized that he should probably address his nightly binge drinking, but chose to deal with it by just massaging the numbers. He's not giving up anything for Lent as much as maybe giving up on himself. His neighbors chose to sentimentalize his nightly self-destructive ritual and ignore the more uncomfortable obligations of friendship. Of course, perhaps Michael the barman took Sean aside after the evening wore on and had a heart-to-heart with him, ignoring his financial stake in a customer like Sean. And I'd like to think he did. We have to remember, the model for Lent is Jesus' 40 days and 40 nights fasting in the wilderness. He not only fasted, he prayed and was tempted by Satan. In the early church, Lent was a time that new converts prepared for their new life as Christians with instruction twice a day, fasting and praying, culminating with baptism on Easter morning. Baptism then meant immersing yourself naked in the waters of baptism. The symbolism of new life could not be more stark, emerging wet and naked to a new reality. We all have the opportunity for new life. No matter how old we are, no matter how long ago we were baptized, we can always choose to reach for new life. We can take on our own demons. They may be personal demons, they may be bigger than that. Some people give up an indulgence like dessert or expensive coffee, set the money aside and donate it to a charity that addresses hunger. If you're concerned about global climate change, we can all work on reducing our carbon footprints by walking more and using our cars less. I know that's easy for me to say. I live right next door to work. But Jane and I have given up eating meat for Lent because of the impact of its production on the environment. If we want to fight racism, we can prayerfully explore how that demon lives in us. Maybe there is some way we can improve our own behavior in a way that improves our relationships with others. As with anything, as we enter the wilderness of Lent, how we emerge has to do with how fully we engage our bodies, minds, spirits, time, talents, and treasures as everything to do with new life that we seek in a world without end. Amen. And now let's pause for a musical meditation.